Should one of London's councils ban a protest group from demonstrating outside one of London's abortion clinics? That's the idea Ealing Council will debate this week. The bosses of the Mary Stopes Centre say the anti-abortion group is intimidating and harassing women who go there. They're even accused the protesters of filming women as they go in and putting it live on Facebook. The group deny that and intimidating anyone. The council has the power to ban them for antisocial behaviour, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
This man calls himself a witness. He holds rosary beads, blue for a boy, pink for a girl, and a pile of leaflets. He's standing outside an abortion clinic in Ealing, trying to persuade the women who come here seeking help to change their minds. The vigil, by members of a pro-life organisation called the Good Council Network, is a daily event. But the clinic claims its patients are increasingly being intimidated, even having their faces filmed and streamed on social media.
We have seen live streaming on Facebook, which puts patients at risk not only in terms of their confidentiality but their safety at home. That's our biggest concern, and that's the escalation that we've seen.
I want to categorically deny that anyone in the pro-life movement does this. If that was the case, produce the evidence. One group did a live-streamed event, but it was not outside a clinic, and it was nothing to do with us either.
On some Saturdays, the Ealing clinic is under siege from two rival groups as members of Sister Supporter try to disrupt the activities of the Good Council Network.
We don't mind if they demonstrate, but demonstrate outside Parliament, demonstrate outside the council offices. Women have a right to access healthcare services without fear and intimidation.
Sister Supporter is now calling on Ealing Council to put a stop to all protests here. Ealing Council is being asked to create a mini exclusion zone in front of the clinic. The same measure used against antisocial behaviour like fly tipping and drug dealing. And there is support for the idea among some councillors.
Not only is it disrupting the lives of residents living in that vicinity, but it's also having a detrimental effect on the women that are merely trying to access legally available healthcare.
The pro-life group claims the buffer zone would amount to an attack on freedom of speech.
How unusual is it, Simon, for a council to consider banning a protest group like this?
Well, this is believed to be the first time a public spaces protection order has been considered to curtail the activities of protesters outside of an abortion clinic. Now, something like 3,500 residents close to the clinic in Ealing have written or signed a petition calling on the council to do something. It's not just the vigil that angers them, but also the graphic photographs that are left on the pavements for all to see, including children. Now, Ealing Council will debate it tomorrow night, but won't take a final decision. Council officials have been gathering evidence since July. They'll review that later next month, and then there'll be a public consultation. But if Ealing Council does go down the road of a buffer zone or exclusion zone, then it's possible that other councils with abortion clinics targeted by protesters will do the same. All
right, Simon, thank you very much. Thank you. Just 2 weeks after London was bombed in 2005, a group of would-be terrorists tried to kill again. They failed and were jailed. So was a woman who helped one of them escape to Brighton after the July the 21st attack went wrong. It has now emerged that the woman, Mulum Ebat Gurma, managed to get a job with Southwark Council after she was released from prison and even became a poster girl for them. She didn't tell them about her terrorism conviction and has since been sacked. But could and should bosses have done more to stop her getting the job in the first place? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
To her bosses, she was the poster girl they were proud to put on the front page of their newsletter. But Mulum Ebat Gurma was hiding a secret. She served a prison sentence for helping a failed suicide bomber escape justice. And it seems no one at Labour-controlled Southwark Council had a clue.
It's an incredibly serious conviction, and the council ought to have known about it. To allow people to have access to data about vulnerable residents when they've had such a conviction is very worrying indeed.
Gurma is understood to have worked here at Southwark Council's Queen's Road complex in Peckham. The council said she was employed in a junior capacity as a customer services officer and didn't tell anyone about her connection to terrorism. It's not as if details about her background are hard to find. A simple Google search reveals she has her own Wikipedia page, listing her convictions and her prison sentence. Gurma was 24 when she was jailed for assisting an offender, her brother-in-law Hussein Osman. He was one of the would-be suicide bombers who tried to blow up tube trains and a bus on July the 21st, 2005, a copycat of the deadly 7/7 attacks 2 weeks earlier. Osman's target was an underground train on the Hammersmith and City line. When the bomb failed to go off at Shepherd's Bush, he fled along the tracks and by bus before escaping to Europe with Gurma's help. He was eventually arrested in Italy. In a statement, Southwark's chief executive, Eleanor Kelly, said of Gurma, "As soon as her background came to light, we took immediate action and terminated her employment. We have also undertaken a robust review of our processes and procedures in light of this incident." The council said it had uncovered no evidence of wrongdoing by Gurma before she was sacked.
And Simon, in the last minute, we've just had a statement from her solicitors on this.
Yes, this story has changed slightly. I think it's a measure of just how embarrassing it is for Southwark that none of its senior officials or officers was prepared to talk to us today. Clearly, it's not a good advert for the background checks they're supposed to do when they're hiring someone. But they made it very clear that in this case, Gurma did not tell them of her past. But in the last few minutes, her solicitors have issued a statement directly contradicting that and saying, in fact, she did. And this is what they said. She disclosed her convictions in her application to Southwark Council, both in writing and orally, and subsequently had a successful career, which has now been destroyed for no purpose.
All right, well, we'll definitely follow up on this story. Simon Harris, thank you very much. Thank you. On Theresa May's first visit to the White House as Prime Minister, she invited President Trump to Britain for a state visit. But the surprise announcement was met with instant concern. There was a petition against it and threats of mass protests. Tonight, it seems it is off, or at least downgraded. It appears the President will come to London. We still don't know when, but he won't be staying with the Queen. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the details.
It's one of the highest honours given by Britain to a foreign leader, the official state visit. Hosted by the Queen, it's a blend of pageantry and diplomacy. This was the state visit by the Chinese president in 2015. Even the most Republican of VIP guests can't fail to be impressed. For security reasons, American presidents on a state visit no longer ride along the Mall in an open-topped carriage. But the very least they would expect is a meeting with the Queen and a banquet. Some even get to stay at Buckingham Palace. It was during the Prime Minister's hand-holding trip to the White House in January that President Trump was offered a state visit. And it provoked uproar from critics here. An online petition calling on Downing Street to cancel the visit quickly gathered 1 million signatures. Now it's emerged that when the President next comes to London, it's likely to be a working visit with no royal ceremony.
Well, I welcome this climb down from Theresa May and from Donald Trump. I've always said that it's not appropriate for there to be the rolling out of the red carpet and a state visit for Donald Trump when there are so many views he holds that we disagree with.
Even his critics acknowledge there's a valid reason for President Trump to come to London soon. It's just how he's received.
I welcome a low-key visit from the President. I hope that he won't be allowed to address Westminster Hall. That has previously been reserved for people like Nelson Mandela, who I think it much more fitting to offer that to him. But I hope that he will want to meet with members of Parliament because there are critical issues that we would like him to respond to.
The President's dream of following in the footsteps of his predecessors hasn't vanished entirely. The Foreign Office insisted today the state visit is still on. The invitation stands. But for now, there is no date in the calendar. So just when the presidential motorcade next rolls through the palace gates is anybody's guess. Simon Harris, ITV News, Buckingham Palace.
Now, if hailing an Uber is very much part of your weekend plans, have you considered that by this time tomorrow the app could be banned from operating in London? The deadline for Uber to appeal against TfL's decision to suspend its licence expires tomorrow. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris is here. Simon, how likely is it that Uber will cease to exist in London come tomorrow evening?
Well, it is true that Uber has left it very late to lodge its appeal at the High Court. And if it doesn't do that, it will cease trading in London by this time tomorrow. But that's a very unlikely scenario. Uber's lawyers are expected to file the papers at the High Court before tomorrow's 4:30 p.m. deadline, which means the company can carry on in London for the time being at least. Last week, Uber's new global chief executive officer met London's Transport Commissioner in what was seen as a first step to try to patch things up in the hope of Uber getting a new licence. And at City Hall today, the Mayor was asked by London Assembly Conservative member Andrew Boff when that might happen.
How soon can Londoners expect a U-turn on this decision?
Well, I think the global CEO has already done a U-turn. I think Londoners should welcome the U-turn from the global CEO of Uber.
What was that U-turn, Mr. Mayor?
It was the apology given by the global CEO of Uber to Londoners.
In theory, Uber's appeal against not having its licence renewed could take months, if not longer. But the company would like to have more of what it calls constructive meetings with Transport for London in the hope that this doesn't actually go to court and can be resolved without any High Court or legal process.
All right, Simon, for now, thank you.